Sitcoms give us a familiar figure we often overlook, the best friend. They show up with a crooked grin and a half-baked plan, rarely the lead and almost never the face on the poster. Their purpose is to be the faithful foil, provide the laugh, and help the star shine brighter. We chuckle, shake our heads, and forget them when the credits fade. In the 1980s, one of the most memorable was Richard Boner, stabbing on Growing Pains. Millions loved the goofy loyalty, but the man behind the character, Andrew Koenig, lived a far more complicated and ultimately tragic story: artist, activist, and a son fighting a silent, relentless darkness. To understand his rise, return to the 1980s, the golden age of the American family sitcom. After a cynical 1970s, television became a comfort ritual again. The Cosby Show, Family Ties, and Cheers dominated primetime, giving tens of millions a weekly shared routine. Family comedies offered an idealized America, relatable problems, wise parents, and conflicts resolved with a heartfelt hug before the credits rolled. Premiering in 1985, Growing Pains fit perfectly. It followed the Seaver family, with Alan Thicke as Dr. Jason Seaver and Joanna Kearns as Maggie, while breakout teen idol Kirk Cameron played mischievous eldest son Mike. Koenig was also born into another pop culture universe. His father, Walter Koenig, became beloved worldwide as Pavel Chekhov, the Russian ensign on the bridge of the USS Enterprise in the original Star Trek. That role was not merely a job. It was a phenomenon with conventions, fan clubs, and a promise to live long and prosper. Andrew grew up amid passionate fans and the long shadow of a franchise that never stopped resonating. Born August 17, 1968 in Los Angeles, Koenig stepped into the family business as a teenager. He landed small roles before winning, at 17, the part that fixed his public image. Richard Stabone, Boner, Mike Seaver's loyal, not always bright best friend. Koenig's lanky frame, quick smile, and instinctive timing made the character click. His chemistry with Cameron felt effortless, and he quickly became a fan favorite. For 4 seasons, he was a recurring face in millions of homes, a cultural touchstone who made mischief, and took the jokes so the lead could grow. Sidekicks, however, stand on precarious ground. In 1989, the writers crafted a patriotic farewell. In a 2-part episode, Boner enlisted in the Marine Corps, said an emotional goodbye to the Seavers, and marched toward a future beyond the show. At 21, Koenig's run on one of television's biggest hits was over. The years that followed mixed steady work with the search for a new identity. For a time, he was typecast as the goofy friend. He guest-starred on other series and did voice work, including projects tied to the G.I. Joe franchise. It demands patience, technical precision, and a storyteller's ear. Koenig cut independent films and shorts in a space where a famous face did not matter. He also directed short projects and stage productions, collaborating closely with friends and peers. This was not a washed-up actor grasping at nostalgia. It was a working artist learning new crafts and building a life out of view. Another revealing chapter was his fierce commitment to human rights activism. This was not a vanity project. It was conviction. Koenig championed the people of Myanmar, then living under a brutal military junta. In 2008, he traveled to the Thai-Burmese border and later joined demonstrations in Los Angeles, including protests at the Chinese consulate over Beijing's support for the regime. He was arrested during one action, a small but telling price he willingly paid for a cause he believed in. He also poured energy into early web video and podcast work with comedian friends, editing and appearing on projects that gave him community and purpose. Beneath the creativity and the causes, depression persisted. It had shadowed him for years. In February 2010, at 41, Koenig traveled to Vancouver, a city he loved and once called home, to see friends during the Winter Olympics. He was last seen on February 14 and missed his February 16 flight to Los Angeles. As days stretched into a week, his family grew frantic. Walter flew to Vancouver and, alongside local police, made wrenching public appeals. He spoke candidly about Andrew's state of mind, including that he had recently stopped taking medication and had sent a despondent note. Friends across Andrew's life echoed the worry. They described him as intelligent, witty, fiercely loyal, and deeply sensitive, someone with a dark sense of humor and a generous heart. Kirk Cameron offered public prayers for the family. In Vancouver, friends organized search parties that combed parks and neighborhoods. The missing son of a Star Trek icon became an international news story. For 11 agonizing days, the family waited for a call that never came, suspended between hope and dread. On February 25, 2010, the search ended in heartbreak. A group of Andrew's friends found his body in Stanley Park, one of his favorite places. He had taken his own life, hanging himself in a secluded grove. The next day, Walter faced the cameras with his wife, Judy, at his side. Hope had given way to unyielding sorrow. "My son took his own life," he said through tears. He was obviously in a lot of pain. He then turned grief into service, pleading with anyone battling depression to seek help and not make the same tragic choice. Koenig's story isn't a scandal, it is a mirror. It reflects the hidden pressures that can crush a person who seems to have every advantage. Consider the peculiar curse of the sidekick. Stars fight their own battles, but the sidekick is famous in a narrower way, forever an appendage to someone else. To much of the public, Andrew was Andrew Koenig. He was Boner from Growing Pains. Escaping that sticky identity is a monumental task. Every interview, every introduction, every nostalgic headline pulls a person backward. A second pressure was the shadow of a famous parent. Being Walter Koenig's son opened doors in a brutal industry, but it guaranteed constant comparison. However much Andrew edited, directed, or advocated, the label followed: Walter's son. Living under that long shadow imposes a quiet, relentless demand to live up to a name that isn't entirely your own. Then there was the nickname itself. In 1985, many still used boner to mean a blunder. Over time, the sexual slang meaning swallowed the first. Imagine reaching middle age and still being greeted as boner by strangers. What began as an innocent joke became a source of crude humor and, likely, deep embarrassment. The lasting significance of Andrew Koenig's life and death lies in what they teach about fame, identity, and mental health. He was not simply another former child actor with a sad ending. His circumstances were particular. The sidekick, the famous son, the man welded to an increasingly awkward character name. Most importantly, his father's unflinching candor turned private grief into public service. At a time when stigma still muffled conversations about depression and suicide, Walter refused euphemism. Koenig's adult choices complicate the cliché. He was not wallowing in the past or desperate for relevance. He edited, directed, collaborated, and advocated. Remembering him as an activist is as important as remembering him as Boner. It honors the fullness of his life and the man he became after the studio lights dimmed. We welcomed a lovable sidekick into our living rooms, but a thoughtful working artist made that character real, and he kept creating long after laugh tracks stopped. When a life ends in darkness, the final chapter threatens to swallow all the pages before it. We risk remembering Andrew only for a role and for the way he died. That would miss the truth. He was a son who grew up in the shadow of a pop culture giant yet carved a creative path of his own, an actor who brought laughter to millions, and an artist who found his voice in the quiet precision of the editing room. He was a collaborator, a friend, and a determined advocate for human rights. His story is a hard lesson in the relentless power of depression and a plea for compassion. We remember him with compassion, humility, and care for one another beyond the shadow of a role.